country and the people of our nation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. She has a remarkable track record. And Mary, I have to tell you that as I thought about today, and I thought about how to introduce you, I reflected on the contributions of women to the state of Florida, to the country. And I did that. I'm not done. You can stand. I like you to stand and be recognized. And I will share the mic in a moment with you. I did all this reflection yesterday. Guess from where? From the Women's Equality National Monument, where the National Park Service leadership was having our last meeting with Director Jarvis before he leaves office. And it was a very appropriate place, and I could not help myself but allow my thoughts to scatter away to today, while that meeting yesterday was taking place, because the accomplishments here in Florida are great. Mary is the president of the GFWC, Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, based in Melbourne, Florida. Now in its second century of community service, not Mary, but the clubs, traces its history to the community interest found in Florida women in the late 1890s and during the 1900s. Early special projects of the club women included forest conservation. During the administration of Mrs. Lawrence Hines, a proposal to make a forest reservation on Paradise Key was endorsed. This later became the heart of Royal Palm State Park, and over 119 years since its inception, the members of the GFWC, Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, are still about the business of identifying the needs of the local community and then working to meet those needs through community service projects. Mary, we are extremely delighted that you are here with us today. We thank you and all the women behind your story for all of your contributions. Please join me up here and thank you very much.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. It's a good thing I got up this morning and really fixed my hair. It is a beautiful morning though, and the breeze, actually, mosquitoes don't bite redheaded people. No, I have not had one mosquito bite, but this breeze has been wonderful and beautiful. As president of the GFWC, Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, I want to thank a few special people. Linda Randolph in particular, who is the District 11 Director. And I want to recognize a few clubs that are here today. Of course, Coconut Grove and the Women's Club of Homestead, the Miami Springs Women's Club, the El Portal Women's Club, Homestead Women's Club, and Homestead Juniors. Also, I would like to recognize the District 10 Director, Linda Vitapka, who's here from the Sebastian Women's Club. And let me see, and Marty McGeary is here from Deerfield Beach. So we have a few extras. Okay, we got some more girls in the back from
Northeast.
That's what I was going to say. And Cocoa Plum, where's my Cocoa Plum girls? There they are, yes, Cocoa Plum. And Coral Gables, of course. President Coral Gables. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you who have participated in this wonderful event today. I know that you have worked very hard, countless hours of activity involved in getting ready for this, and I have to tell you that I am very impressed. When Linda Randolph first mentioned this project to me and invited me to be part of it, I was so excited and thrilled to be included and on the receiving end of so much information about Royal Palm Park and the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs' involvement in its beginnings. In an effort to get a feel for the year 1915-1916, I went back and reread the book by Patrick D. Smith called A Land Remembered. This book is about 3 generations of McIvies and their challenge to survive, to prosper, and to thrive in Florida beginning in 1863 until 1968. On the first page of the book, which begins in 1968 and then jumps back to 1863, it mentions coming to a park bordered by stately royal palm trees. And here we are. And that's what we are doing today. We are remembering this land and our stately park bordered by royal palms in our beautiful state of Florida. A Land Remembered begins in North Florida around Fernandina, which happens to be where I'm from. And near that area is also where the GFWC, Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, began in 1895. Visionary leaders at the Village Improvement Association of Green Cove Springs called together members of the VIA Orange City Women's Club, the Crescent City Women's Club, the Tarpon Springs Women's Club, and Fairfield of Jacksonville Women's Club to form a federation of Florida clubs and to officially become a part of the General Federation of Women's Clubs. Can you imagine traveling to Village Improvement Association in Green Cove Springs from Tarpon Springs, or from Green Cove, or from Orange City, or from Crescent City? Many travel by train and riverboat because Green Cove Springs is right on the St. Johns River just south of Jacksonville. What a trip to try to bring together an organization and form the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs. That's when our federation began in Florida, and like so many other states, women took up causes and gathered together to form clubs and to organize in an effort to have a collective voice for change in their communities. When we celebrate club anniversaries, I always love to read about many of the clubs that began just as in an effort to beautify their communities and to have some influence over getting the cows and the pigs off the streets. One club was clever enough, and I want to give one of your clubs credit for that, was clever enough to capture the wild pigs that were roaming their streets, and they sold them back to their husbands, oftentimes at inflated prices. Now, I think that's a great fundraising idea. Club women of GFWC first began expressing interest in conservation as early as 1896, and advocacy for green spaces rapidly became a central concern. By 1902, the General Federation of Women's Club had created the Forestry Committee, the precursor to today's Conservation Committee. Club women across the country became active participants in the fight for national parks. In 1905 through 1909, the governor of Florida, Napoleon Bonaparte Broward, was all about draining the swamp so that development could continue in this area, and they grew a lot of vegetables in this area. But Edith Gifford and Mary Barr Monroe had a different idea. If we destroyed it all, what would be left of the beauty that is this park in South Florida for those who come after us, those going down the trail now? In 1906, Edith Gifford introduced a resolution at the General Federation of Women's Clubs National Convention to form a conservation department, and Mary Bell King Sherman from the Colorado Federation became chair of that department in 1914, where she advocated for the establishment of the National Park Service. As president of the General Federation of Women's Clubs from 1922 to 1926, she was nicknamed the National Park Lady and was instrumental in helping to establish 6 national parks. Specifically, she became a force in lobbying for the creation of Rocky Mountain National Park in 1915 and was involved in the campaign for the Grand Canyon National Park. As conservation chairman, Sherman threw her full support of the General Federation of Women's Clubs behind the creation of the National Park Service, which became a reality on August the 25th, 1916. I got that right. In particular, we appreciated her involvement in the dedication of Royal Palm Park in 1916 when she said, and I'm going to quote her if you don't mind, "It is to the great credit of the Florida women that they had the vision in these days of commercialism to save one of their most beautiful, natural, scenic places for park purposes. Natural scenery becomes our greatest asset when we use it for recreation, for rest and encouragement to the weary and toil-worn of this generation, and for the development of the boys and girls of today into good citizens of tomorrow. I know of no other state which is doing such good work in conservation along so many lines as Florida Federation of Women's Clubs. Procurement of Royal Palm Park would not have been accomplished without the lobbying work done by the 1914 to 1917 Florida Federation of Women's Clubs president, May Mann Jennings." Yes. It was a unique time for Florida Federation because of the history May Mann Jennings had with the Florida legislature, having served as Florida's First Lady during the 1901 to 1905 governorship of her husband, William S. Jennings, and serving as hostess for her father, Austin Mann, while he served in the late 1800s in the Florida legislature. It was interesting to me that during that time, while living in Tallahassee, when she married William Jennings on May the 12th, 1891, she was escorted down the aisle by the full legislative membership. She definitely had some influence with those gentlemen. With this background and her boundless energy, she was more than qualified to lead the fight to stop exploitation and to save Royal Palm Hammock. The last day of the legislative session for 1915 was about to occur, and they would not meet again for 2 years. But on June the 2nd, the House passed the Royal Palm Park Bill, and on June the 5th, 1915, Governor Park, what a great name, Park Trammell, approved and signed into law the first and only state park created by a legislative act. By this law, the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs became the only federation in the United States to own a state park. Soon after the law was passed, Mary Lily Kennan Flagler, Henry Flagler's wife, donated 960 acres as an endowment, thus increasing the park to 1,920 acres. The park was dedicated on November the 23rd, 1916. By 1921, 2,080 more acres were donated by the state, making Royal Palm a 4,000-acre state park. And the rest of the story of A Land Remembered is that the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs took charge of the park. They hired a ranger, they built a lodge, they cut roads, and they maintained the park continuously until it was deeded to the National Park Service and became part of the Everglades National Park in 1947. The women of the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs met the challenge. They accomplished their goals. They rose above the idea of failure. We did it. May Mann Jennings May Mann Jennings said in her dedication of the park in 1916, and as president of the GFWC, Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, I too would like to say, with the power in me vested as president of Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, I hereby rededicate this Royal Palm Park to the people of Florida and their children forever. Thank you.